for your patience. So let me share my screen over here, and then we can start. Once again, excited about our guest today. We had him before a few times in the past, and as always, a great, valuable information. So, okay. Let's start. Halley, take us with the quote.
One of the rewards of success is freedom, the ability to do whatever you like. Sting.
Straight to the point, huh? Yeah, we can. It's okay to quote Sting. He's a good guy.
I think it's okay.
What does it mean to you?
I think that lots of times I read success with monetary notes. You know, I think of money, and I think that it reminds me that the true success is freedom, right? What that brings, and what success means, what freedom means. It makes me think. That's good.
Good. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that in the spirit of 4th of July, carrying into this week and this month as well. So just worth reminding everybody. Thank you for that. And then now we're gonna present our speaker for the day, Mr. Wei, Oscar Wei, the Senior Economist and Director of Research for California Association of Realtors. We had Mr. Wei in the past couple of times, and it's always great to have him as our main guest. He has a wealth of knowledge and information, and definitely great timing to talk about what's new, what's different, how things change and evolve in a sense of the housing market and other updates that Mr. Wei will have for us. And you know, as you know, if some of you know just new to the calls, Mr. Wei is the Senior Economist, as I mentioned, for CAR. Analyzes the housing market conditions, consumer behavior, public policy issues throughout the use of transactional data, and several research studies by CER. And once again, he has a lot to share, and I'm excited to have you on the call, Mr. Wei, as always.
Great. Thank you, Meny. Thank you for inviting me back. It's a pleasure to be here. And, you know, I know we had a little bit of a technical glitch this morning, but that's what makes it real, right? And, you know, we need to look at some of the real stuff. And what makes it more real is, of course, what's going on right now. And I'll show you some statistics, show you some slides like I did before. And let me see if I can show my screen. You guys can hear me, right? I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay, let me show my screen. And let's see. Give me a second.
Yeah, we can see your screen too. Thank you.
Perfect. Perfect. So let's get started. Now, last time I presented, it was about a couple months ago, right? I think it was mid-May, if I remember correctly. And maybe it was even before mid-May. And it was before the reopening, I believe. The state then reopened in, I believe, 15th or so, May 15th or so. And then things seem to be getting a little bit better for a while. And then the last couple weeks, we started seeing a little bit of uptake in the coronavirus. So let's hone in a little bit on some of the statistics on the coronavirus pandemic. And then I'm going to talk about the housing market before we get into the market. So let's take a look. You probably have heard on the news, last couple of weeks been pretty tough, not just for California, but for many states within the US. So let's take a look at some numbers. I specifically pull up some numbers for California just to give a sense of what we're going through right now before we get into what we will be going through in the next few weeks. So let's take a look at some news, some statistics. Now, I said it's getting a little worse in the last few weeks. If you take a look at the slide on the graph on the left-hand side, you'll see towards the end, in the last 3 weeks or so, we started seeing a little bit of an uptick in daily new cases. We started seeing more new cases. In fact, for the state, on a daily basis, we get about 6,000, a little bit more than 6,000 cases for the last few days. That's pretty high compared to what we saw and what we experienced in late May, late April, early May. It was about 2,000, 3,000. But of course, keep in mind, the number of new cases, we have more new cases. That's expected because we also have more testings. Lately, in recent weeks, we have been getting more and more testings, but that's not the only reason why we're seeing more new cases. If you look at some of the other statistics, look at, again, the number of hospital patients, number of people who've been hospitalized also have shot up quite significantly. Now, that number may not necessarily hinge on number of testings. So this is a little concerning because in the past, weeks before, we're seeing some slowdown. In fact, that's the reason why we started reopening, and then we started seeing some upsurge. We can attribute it, partly to more testings, but at the same time, we have to attribute to the fact that I think once we start reopening, we have been relaxing, the social distancing measure a little bit. We might have been together, maybe a little bit less careful as compared to a few weeks ago. So that's why we're seeing a little bit more uptick in the last few weeks. Now, if we switch gear and take a look at the number of positive tests, number of people who get tested with a positive rate, that number also has climbed up quite dramatically. I think a few weeks ago, before the reopening, we had a positivity rate of below 5%. I think it was at 1.4%, and then it started climbing to recently. The latest number that I have is 6.8%. That's a significant increase. And in LA, I think LA's number also went up quite dramatic for LA County. LA County, the last number that I saw, the positivity rate was over 11%. I think it was 11.6%, which was very, very significant. So we want to keep in mind that we need to make sure that we keep this coronavirus pandemic under control, because otherwise we may have to have, the state closed again. I mean, we have already gone through, we have already got into phase 2, but then some of the counties have already closed down some of the restaurants and bars in order to keep this under contained. So we don't want, the economy to be closed again. Remember what I presented last time, I think at the end of my last presentation, I showed a slide of the Spanish flu, something that happened about 100 years ago. I said, back then, we had a first wave. A couple months later, we had a second wave of the Spanish flu, and that actually hit even harder than the first time. In fact, it hit like 5 times harder as far as death toll is concerned and new cases are concerned. So we don't want anything like that to happen. We want to make sure that we keep this under control, and so we can actually continue to improve. Now, the coronavirus pandemic obviously have done a lot of damage to the public health, but at the same time, it also have some negative impact to the economy. And that's very important to know because it affects the housing market. So let's take a look at the economic update. You saw the slide last time as well. Last time it was with the preliminary results. If you look at the orange bar at the very end, it shows last time it shows a 4.8%. Now it has since actually revised to a 5%, which is a little bit more negative than before. And that 5%, is actually the worst that we have seen since last recession. But the 5%, as I mentioned earlier, or as I mentioned last time also, is going to be just a prelude. The second quarter is the quarter that we're going to see a little bit more significant decline. And the reason why we're going to see some significant decline in the second quarter is because of a retail sales number. Now, the second quarter by an aggregate number from different economists suggests that the second quarter GDP, the economic growth rate, is going to go down by about between 30 to 40% as compared to 5% in the first quarter. Now that's very, very significant. I think, if it actually goes down by 30% or so, it will be the biggest that we've seen since, World War II. Now, the reason why we're going to see, a decline, and I believe that we are going to see more significant decline in the second quarter is because of consumer spending. The retail sales is a big part of consumer spending, and consumer spending makes up about 65-70% of the economic growth, the GDP. And you probably know, while we were able to do some shopping online. We went on to Amazon and so forth. Still, the money we spend on service in the service sectors, going to restaurants or going to bars, we haven't really been able to spend that money because we were not able to. A lot of people were not able to go out in April and part of May. Now we started doing a little bit more, going out a little bit more with our social distancing measure and with our mask in May, but still the economic activity has slowed down even in June as well. So retail sales dipped in March by 8% and then dipped another 15% in May. Now we see dip another 15% in April. We started seeing a little bit of bounce back when the economy reopened. It actually bounced back by a significant 18%, which is very encouraging. But what we don't have here is a year-over-year comparison. If you look at the year-over-year comparison, it actually is, we're still down by about 6 or 7% compared to last year. So when we look at the entire quarter, which will close, after, it probably will release, maybe about 3-4 weeks from today, we are going to see a down. The question is how much more down? Now this is just, retail sales. We also will also be down by not just consumer spending, but also investment spending on the business side, but also on government spending as well as import-export. So it's going to take, we're going to see, some significant decline. And you can probably infer that, from the labor market. The labor market has been hit hard. The unemployment number will tell you that, we have some serious issue with the labor market. With the unemployment rate, climbing to 11%, that's a significant number. But that number in June, 11.1%, is actually not the worst that we have seen. In the last couple months, we actually saw the number surged all the way to close to 15%, dropped down to about 13.2 or so, and then dropped a little bit more in 11.1%. Now that's good that we're seeing a little bit of improvement, and part of the reason is because of some of the federal assistance program, like the PPP program, that kind of helps the economy a little bit. But also, when the economy reopened in May, we started seeing some people get hired back, but not all. Now the 11.1% is still a very high number. Keep in mind, compared to what we had earlier part of the year. Remember, early part of the year we had a below 4% unemployment rate. In fact, about 3.5%, which was a record-setting number as well. But then it shot up to 11.1%. And the reason why we're seeing some significant drop in the unemployment rate in the last couple months is because of improvement in job growth. This slide shows you, the number of jobs gained in the last couple months. In May, we improved our employment by 2.7 million. And then again in June, it increased by 4.8 million. So together for May and June, it increased by about 7.5 million. But keep in mind, if you look at, if you don't look at April, then you might think, wow, that's actually pretty impressive. But if you look at April's number, April actually dropped close to 21 million. So that means we're still short by about 14, 15 million. If you look at, this chart, this shows you the unemployment, this shows you the non-farm employment. We had a surge, we had a continuous increase in employment all the way to February, and then we dropped sharply. We bounced back. So we're still short about 14, 15 million as compared to early part of the year. So it's going to take some time for us to get back to where we were. In fact, it could take, the whole 2021 or so, and also maybe, 2022 as well. And, despite the fact that we are seeing some improvement, from our weekly numbers, weekly jobless claims number that, we're still not out of the wood. If you look at this number, these are number of people who file for unemployment insurance for the first time. And it's not a surprise. It shot up, at the end of March when we had the economy shut down in mid-March or so. It shot up to 7 million. It started declining. And it started declining. It has been declining for the last 13 consecutive weeks, which is great, but it's not falling fast enough. The latest number that we collected from last week was still, we have about 1.4 million number of people who filed for the initial claim for the very first time. Still a very high number. Consider that, that number compared to the beginning of the year when we only had a less than 300,000. So that's a significant number. Now, some of those people probably get hired back already. When the economy reopened, we probably have some people who got furloughed, hired back. But if you look at the number of people who continue to receive unemployment, this is the continuing claims, it's still close to 20 million. Still a very high number. Again, compared to at the beginning of the year, we were maybe about, 7 or 8 times higher. And for California, it also is a pretty significant number. If you look at California, it's at 280,000. Yes, it dropped from the peak of over 1 million. But since then, in the last few weeks, we have been kind of leveling off. We're not seeing as good an improvement as we were hoping to be. So hopefully, we will improve further, but still we have to increase it. We have to make sure we contain, the coronavirus first before things will improve. The consumers, because of the reopening in May, started seeing a little bit of improvement, the consumer confidence, but then I wouldn't bet on the fact that, so it surged from 85, 86 to 98.1, which is a decent number, still below 100, but still a better number. But I wouldn't bet on the fact that, I wouldn't bet on it improving that much in July because of the fact that we have a resurgence in the pandemic or the coronavirus cases. So the consumer confidence probably will level off a little bit in the next month or two. So what about the market? Now, the market, I think, from the last couple of sessions when I mentioned, the market probably, housing market probably will lead us, out of the recession. It's actually a brighter spot compared to some of the other industries. Now, you wouldn't notice that, in the monthly data. Now, we have some numbers, monthly data that I'm going to show you that may be a little bit more backward looking if you look at the closed sales, but we also have some more leading indicators when you look at some pending sales numbers. And let me first show you some of the monthly numbers to give you a sense of what we have gone through, and then what we're going through, and then I'm going to show you, where we're going to be at. So let's take a look at the monthly number. Now I know I only have May sales number. We will be releasing our June number, monthly sales number next week. That will give you a little bit more recent data, but I will give you some weekly number in the next few slides. But let's take a look at the monthly. The monthly closed sales, which reflect buying interest or demand in April, because that's when people get into open escrow. So closed sales on a year-over-year basis actually dropped quite significantly. Now, for many of you who've been paying attention to our sales and price report, we actually reported a 6 or 7% decline in I think March. In April, it dropped about 32%, and it dropped to 41% on a year-over-year basis compared to last year in May, which is a significant drop. But I can tell you that, based on what we have seen, what we are seeing in the pending sales, that's probably the bottom. June will bounce back. Now, even though it might be bouncing back, for the first 5 months, we have already dropped about 13% in terms of sales. That's pretty significant. Whether we're going to recover back, some of the sales, it's hard to say. I think for this year, it's pretty much set that, for the rest of the year, we probably will still be trailing back behind last year's. So most likely this year will be declining by maybe about 10 to 12%. And I'll show you some of those forecasts in a minute and at the end of the presentation. But if you take a look at price, a lot of your consumers, a lot of your clients are concerned about price, whether price will be dropping. And, demand affects price as well. So take a look at the median price at the state level. it dropped about 3.7% on a year-over-year basis. Not a significant drop, but still a drop. In fact, it's actually the first drop that we have seen for quite some time. I think last time we had a year-over-year drop was in 2012, which was a long, long time ago. Now, we have been still seeing tight supply. Unsold inventory index, months of supply, still 4.3 months. Probably still stay on the market for only a very short period of time, about 17 days. Now, I said, that's the rear view mirror. If you look at the lagging indicator of closed sales, that actually shows a drop. But if you look at pending sales, it shows a more encouraging, some more encouraging news. And pending sales in May, which will close, some of those will close in June, show a surge of 67% compared to the previous month, which is very, very encouraging. After a decline of 20% or 15% in March and April, it surged 67%. But even with a 67% increase, when you compare it to last year, we're still behind last year. Pending sales actually declined 5.5% compared to last year. Now, this is actually a pretty good indicator because if you look at this number here, this is the pending sales in April, which shows a 43% drop in pending sales. Now, remember what it was, for closed sales in May. Closed sales in May, if I go back a little bit, it shows a 41.4% decline in closed sales. So pending sales dropping on a year-over-year basis by 43%, is a pretty good reflection of what happened with closed sales in May. So this suggests to me that in June, we're going to see a close to single-digit decline in pending sales. Now, under normal circumstances, 10% decline is bad. But if you take a look at what happened in the last couple of months, it's actually an improvement. I think it will end up being somewhere between 7 or 8% decline compared to last year. An improvement, but whether that will sustain, it really depends again on the economy and the coronavirus situation. Now let's take a look at Southern California. Southern California also mirror the state very well, with Southern California sales actually dipping about 45, 46%, a little more significant compared to the state as a whole. And individual county, I'm going to show you some weekly number. Now, these are weekly number, and I have data through last week. So these are a little bit more recent. So if you look at individual county, you can see, it bottomed out for LA, for example. It bottomed out maybe in around mid-May or so in terms of closed sales. It started bouncing back. For LA County, it is now probably the highest highest level in closed sales in the last 12, 13 weeks or so, going back to early March. So that's encouraging. If you look at other areas, other counties, Orange County improved, Riverside actually dipped a little bit, but not a whole lot. San Bernardino, San Diego, and Ventura. Now, if you look at the percent change, you'll see that we are seeing some improvement on a weekly basis for all counties except for Riverside, which only dips very slightly. So that's good news, for closed sales. But again, closed sales reflect what happened maybe about a month ago when people were showing interest in buying homes. Now, keep in mind, after a couple months of shutdown, a lot of people want to get back into the market. A lot of people will want to take advantage of the low interest rates. We had very, very low interest rate, right? Many of you know, interest rate. Even now, if you look at 30-year fixed rate, depending on which source you look at, Mortgage News Daily, for example, shows mortgage 30-year fixed rate average below 3%. I mean, it's safe to say we're seeing very, very low interest rate at around 3 to 3.15, depending on the qualification and your credit score and things like that. But it's actually at a very, very low level. So that's why we're seeing a little bit of improvement. Now, if you look at pending sales, though, this is going to reflect what's going to happen in July, maybe in August. We're seeing also, some surge in pending sales in LA. It surged to the highest level in the last couple of weeks, and then it starts seeing a little bit of a leveling off. still at a decent level, but a little bit of a leveling off. But it's also not just in LA, but in some other counties as well. Orange County, Riverside, San Bernardino, San Diego, and Ventura. Now, this is average daily pending sales, so it's not a total. I know last week we had, but this is average daily pending sales. How many pending sales do you have on a daily basis? So, it should take into consideration, some moderation because of the holiday. But still, we're seeing a little bit of a slowing down. Not a whole lot, but it's a little bit of a slowing down for every single county. If you look at the individual county and percent change on a weekly basis, we see a little bit more decline in Orange County, and some decline in some other counties as well. LA actually inched up a little bit by 2.1%. The question is, whether that, slowing down in pending sale is going to continue. Now, there are a lot of different reasons for why we might be seeing a bit of a slowdown in the last few weeks. And we have to continue to observe to see, whether those are some of the good reasons. Now, reasons include, like, as I mentioned, concern about the coronavirus pandemic. Some clients, some consumers, buyers, sellers may be concerned about the recent surge in the pandemic. Other people may be seeing this as the leveling off as a slowdown or transitioning from the home buying season to the slow season. Because typically, in a normal market, around June or so, or May or so, June or July or so, that's when we actually transition off to a slow starting season. Slow starting from the hot buying season to the slow buying season. And, we were all hoping that, things will be stretched out a little bit because we had a shutdown for 2 months. But in reality, whether that is going to be the case, it's really hard to say. So we'll continue to take a look in the next few weeks to see whether we can stretch it a little longer. How much longer, it's really hard to say. Now, there is also, the upside on the mortgage. Mortgage rates, as I mentioned, have been very, very favorable to consumers, and that's the reason why we're seeing, surge in sales and surge in demand. If you look at, just based on a May monthly number, for the state as a whole, if you look at the state single family home, if you were to buy a house, a typical single family home at the median price in last year, you pay a mortgage payment at the prevailing interest rates, 30-year fixed rate, at $2,350 on a monthly basis. This year, because of a drop in mortgage rates by maybe 80, 90 basis point, for a similar house, the mortgage payment you save is about $300. You pay $2,040. That's about a 13% saving. And you can see that, in LA metro area as well. You save about a couple $100, and some of the other areas, Inland Empire, which has a lower price point, save about 100 or so. So it's a good environment for lending environment for many buyers to hop into the market. And here's another, a graph that shows you, how much we save, someone can save in the state market. So that's the reason why I think, we're seeing a little bit of a push in demand. The question is, whether that is sustainable. That depends on supply as well. But before we talk about supplies, let's take a look at price. As I mentioned, price actually dropped for the first time since 2012. Even though the drop is not significant as would have seen in, let's say, as compared to last recessions. Last recessions in 2008, 2009, we actually dropped by about at one point, 25, 30%, maybe even 50%, from the peak to the trough. This time, we saw a drop of 3.7%. Now, it most likely will see some additional drop in the next few months or so, but because of low interest rates, I think it's helping out, but also part of the reason is because of tight supply. Before we talk about supply, let's take a look at individual price point. Now, the drop in price is attributed partly to how strong each price segment is. The lower price segments, which is right here, the 0 to 20th percentile, which is the lowest. This probably somewhere the price range between, say, 0 to maybe about 300. That continued to grow by about 0.4%. But if you look at the other price segments, 20th to 40th, and then the 80th to 100th percentile, they all drop. So with that dropping, it actually pulled the price down a little bit because the mix of sales actually changed a little bit. And that's one of the reasons why we're seeing some decline in price, not only because home price depreciate, but also because we're seeing a little bit of a mix of sales change. I mentioned about supply. When we talk about supply, we need to look at active listings. The number of active listings have been declining. And that's one of the reasons why we're seeing a little bit more support in home prices. Look at active listings. It actually have been dropping on a year-over-year basis by more than 25% for at least, 5 or 6 months, going back to maybe about November of last year. And this last month, it's actually dropped 34%, which was the highest that we have seen for quite some time. And of course, in May, we still have a lot of sellers who are not, willing to put their house in the market because of the coronavirus pandemic situation. We still have to shut down. Despite that, we're seeing more virtual showings. Some of the sellers may still be unwilling to put their house in the market, and it slowed down market activities. And we're going to continue to see, supply and shortage. If you look at Southern California, it dropped in May from 29,000 to 17 or 18,000, which was a close to 40% drop in supply and active listings. That's a significant drop. Now, if we continue to see drop in active listings, we're going to see supply continue to be tight. And the silver lining is it will continue to support the home prices, but at the same time, we're not going to see as many sales. So what are we seeing, in terms of new listings in the last few weeks? Look at individual county here. These are new listings added on a daily basis, average daily new listings. We are seeing in LA a little bit of a slowdown, but also in other counties. Orange County, a little bit of a slowdown, and we're seeing some consistent slowdown in different counties. So this suggests to us that, it is possible that we are seeing a seasonal slowdown, just like what we normally will see in the last few years. New listings actually dipped in all counties and dipped the most in LA and San Diego. Whether that is going to continue, it's really hard to say, but I do believe that we are going to see a little bit of a slowdown here. Now, other indicators also are suggesting a little bit of a slowdown, but still better than last year. If you look at this slides here, these are showing activity in 2020 and 2019. You can clearly see, the orange line is above the green line here, which suggests that, showing activity is actually a little bit above last year's level. After dropping a significant, like 40, 50% compared to the beginning of the year, it started climbing back, and it's over last year's level now. So that's encouraging, but still the slowdown, if you look at it, let's go back a little bit. This decline here suggests that we're actually dropping a little bit more than we would have, compared to last year. So it's something to pay attention to. Now, the other indicator that I have that shows that we are actually still in pretty good shape in terms of improvement from previous month is the number of mortgage applications. New mortgage applications continue to climb. In fact, the latest week, new year-over-year percent change in purchase applications actually jumped about 33%, which was the highest that we have seen for quite some time, at least for the last 6 months or 7 months or so. So we're seeing some improvement in new applications still compared to previous weeks. It's an improvement. Whether that is going to be sustainable, it's again hard to say. But with the current mortgage rates, I think it is possible that we may see continued improvement. But now keep in mind that number as a national number. At the state level, it probably didn't increase as much, maybe by about 10-15% or so. So what can we expect, for the next few weeks? First, let's look at the economy. Again, if you look at the economy, as I mentioned, we are expecting a 30% or 40% decline, depending on which economist you listen to. If you look at the UCLA number, UCLA actually suggests that we will continue to drop by about 42% in the second quarter. I actually think that we will be a little bit more positive than that. I actually think it's closer to 32%. But it's going to go back to the positive arena in the third quarter and fourth quarter. Third quarter and fourth quarter, it should improve, by, double digit in the third quarter, and then maybe double digit by fourth quarter. Keep in mind again that, this is assuming that we don't have a complete lockdown again because of the increase in coronavirus resurgence. If we do, then things may look a little bit better. It may take a little bit longer time for us to recover. Even with a surge in, even with an increased improvement in third quarter and fourth quarter, the whole year is still going to be down compared to last year. We're still going to be down maybe between 5 to 10% in terms of economic output. The unemployment rate will probably still close to 10% as compared to, 4 or 5% that we had earlier this year. What about the market? The housing market, there are a lot of scenarios, and I'm going to show you one that we think, might happen. If you look at the May number, as I mentioned, it bottomed out at around dropping by about 40%, 41% as compared to last year. We're going to see a little bit of a bounce back. Excuse me. A little bit of a bounce back in June. Still going to be down compared to last year by about 10%. But I think we might be leveling off. We might be actually going to be down about 10% for the rest of the year. And with that, we probably will be down for the whole year by about 12 to 13%. What about home prices? Now, I have to be honest, the home price predictions or forecasts that I have here is probably a little bit more conservative. It could actually end up being a little bit better. But last month May being down close to 4%, I think we will see a slight improvement this month, but it's going to kind of remain at around 2 or 3 or 4% down compared to last year. So with that in mind, this year we probably will be down for the year as a whole about 2%. And this is assuming that the interest rates stay at a very, very low level. Continue to stay at 3% or so. And I believe that is going to be the case. And it probably will remain the same in 2021 as well, given that, it's going to take a little bit of time for the economy, the global economy, to actually improve. Now, let's wrap it up, with a few bullet points to kind of revisit what I mentioned. If you take a look at the economy right now, yes, we're seeing a little bit of bounce back, but we are also seeing the resurgence of coronavirus. So the bounce back is happening, but second quarter will dip quite significantly before bouncing back in the third quarter and fourth quarter. The question is whether third and fourth quarter will be significant enough to help us really pull ourselves out. And judging by the resurgence of coronavirus, it's going to take a little bit longer. It's a little concerning because we're seeing increase in cases in major metropolitan area like LA or some other areas. So still something to be very, very concerned about. And as far as the housing market is concerned, we're seeing some improvement. Sales will improve in June. On a month-to-month basis, we're definitely going to see an increase in June. But on a year-over-year basis, it's still going to be a decline, and it will continue to be a decline in the next second half of the year. Supply will remain very, very tight, and that actually will help prices, despite the fact that we still expect prices to actually soften up a little bit, for the rest of the year. With the current lending environment being at with interest rate being at 3% or so, I do believe that housing market will continue to be a bright spot. It will continue to be a better industry. Improve. It will continue to recover a little faster compared to other industries. And with that said, that wraps up the market update. I don't know whether we have time, but if we do, I'm happy to take some questions. And also, the presentation will be posted on the CR website, and I will send a copy to Meny as well.
Great job, Oscar, as always. That was a lot of that was a fire hose of information. For I think you broke a record as well, time-wise. So Thank you for being on top of it. I did drop on the chat. Whoever has a question, this is the best time right now to ask. It seems overall, first of all, it's expected that it's going to be some kind of declining numbers overall. Some areas, I mean, it's a bigger, number as expected, right? The 30-40%, as you mentioned, some categories. Some, it's more encouraging, and that's what I think keeps the economy moving. For example, affordability, right? Right now, it's cheaper to buy a house or to afford a house than it was about a year ago.
Absolutely. I mean, you guys are in the industry, the interest rates have never gone down that low before. If you ask me about, 5 or 6 months ago, whether we are going to see, below 3%, I'll still be a little iffy, but I've seen some numbers below 3%. So that's good in terms of, helping the buyers make decisions, assuming that they're financially capable of doing so. But the other side that we need to worry about, and of course, because of that reason, we are seeing a smaller drop in terms of in home prices, which is also good for the housing market. But the other side is, we continue to see very, very tight supply. It's not a surprise for us, to see tight supply. We know that it's going to continue, and that hurts, the sales side as well.
Yeah, thank you. And then what is concerning, to us, not from economic point of view, is the actual effects of the virus in all the things that we can or cannot do, the restrictions, if you may, on the practice side of real estate, right? That definitely affects numbers. For example, we still cannot do a door knocking. We still cannot drop flyers in the front of the houses. We still cannot do traditional open houses, etc. So by default, that will support the decline of the numbers. But once again, it's also a matter of how creative we can be virtually, etc., while protecting ourselves and the public while practicing, because we see that there's really still high demand in the field.
Yeah, and that's very true. With the current lending environment, you expect high demand, and I'm surprised. Actually, I have been surprised by how fast people adapt to the environment too. Not only for realtors, but as you said, for consumers, because some of the changes that we have seen in virtual tours, virtual transactions, doing things virtually, and working from home, I think, in a normal environment, it might take, a year, 2 years, 3 years to actually get to that level. But, a lot of things were able to be done in a few weeks. We transitioned into a few weeks. Number of virtual tours have gone up significantly. You saw the showing activity. I mean, many of those showings are virtual showings. So, I think, our survival mode, kick in. A lot of people actually adapt and, quickly adapt. But still, some of the traditional, way of doing things, meeting people, face to face, in person, that's still some of the things that a lot of our industry, wants to do, because, building a relationship, is what we want to do. But unfortunately, under the current circumstances, that's, put a limit. And rightfully so, because we need to make sure that we keep this under control before we can open up again.
Yeah, I agree 100%. A couple of questions over here. In economic update, what server are being used for these numbers? Are these based on household surveys?
Well, so I use a lot of different numbers. A lot of time we use data from from the census. Some of those numbers are from Census Bureau. We gather those numbers as far as the unemployment number. For examples, we gather from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. We gather those numbers from at the state level, EDD. So I gather a lot of information. You can say from the government, but at the same time, some of those other statistics that we gathered are based on consumers' statistics, as CR do. I think I might have shown some slide before on consumer behavior. Those are based on surveys that we send out on a regular basis. But many of the economic data, they're based on Census Bureau as well as the Bureau of Labor Statistics.
Thank you for the clarification. one last question I see is, how do you anticipate the market will be affected with the forbearances in about a year or so?
Okay, so I don't have the slide here, but that the number of forbearance in terms of percentage has gone down at the national level, has gone up to about 8.5% or so, depending on which source you look at. And when you look at the Mortgage Bankers Association statistics, it's kind of got to a point where it says 8.5% of all mortgages are in forbearance, and that's actually plateauing. So of course, that number compared to what we saw in the last recessions, actually, number of people who foreclosed their property, it's a much lower number as compared to before. Now, it is going to, I think I mentioned in the last presentation, still going a little bit more, foreclosures and REOs as compared to a normal market. But we're definitely not going to do what we saw, 12 years ago because government measures. The forbearance is one, things that, the government has been extending the moratorium. So, it depends, it really depends on, how the economy will recover. If we continue to recover and if we don't have the coronavirus pandemic extending further, then I think we'll go through a normal recovery and things will actually adjust by itself. We are still going to see more of those foreclosures and REO. So, maybe instead of, I think before the pandemic, we see maybe 1%, maybe less than 1% of foreclosed properties. Maybe that will increase to, let's say, 2, 3, 4, or 5%. But it's not going to be like what we saw back then with like 20% of properties on the market are foreclosed properties. So you're going to see a little bit of that. But the other part of it is, as I mentioned, we're not seeing a significant drop in price. Yet we're going to see maybe a 3 or 4 or 5% drop in price, but that's significantly different from what we saw last time also. So without a significant drop in price, you're not going to see people throwing the keys back to lenders. So that's the reason why we're going to see a little bit of those forbearance being, some people are going to foreclose their properties. We're going to see a little bit of those. But it's not going to significantly affect home prices, and we're not going to see a lot of those foreclosed properties in the market.
Yeah, I agree. Once again, Mr. Oscar Way, great insight, great information, senior economist and director of research for CER. Pleasure to have you once again. Thanks for your wisdom and your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Meny. Thank you very much.
Yeah, stay safe. And hopefully we're gonna get another update with you at one point. You're welcome to stay. In the same tone and the same, I focus on positivity, and I think Oscar brings good news because once again, there's a lot of things that thankfully, weren't affected as they used to be in the past. Shout out to our top performers, the closers of last month. We had great numbers in all the 3 offices. West Side, congrats guys on a great performance. Calabasas, you guys been nonstop as well. And Long Beach, congrats guys, great job. Super busy and just incredible work on all ends. The next meeting, we're going to share the actual top performers by categories for the month. And with that attitude, I know that Halley and Stephanie had to step away from the call to take care of something. But Halley, you and Stephanie reach out to some of our top producers that are doing pretty well. Some of them actually better than before COVID. You got some insight. Take us the next few minutes through what you guys, what kind of discussions we had with them.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you. And thank you, Oscar. That was fantastic information. So one of the trends that we've been seeing right now is, a lot of the buyer's agents are struggling to get their offers accepted because many cases on the listings, you're talking dozens of offers. One agent I heard had like 45 offers on their one property. So one of the things that we really wanted to glean from this information is when you're a listing listing agent, how do you pick stuff out, pick out, you know, even the top 5 or top 2 that you're going to counter, you know, when you have all of these offers that come in. So these are a little bit of information that they shared with us that makes a difference to them and really makes something stick out of the pack. Okay. Now there are going to be scenarios where, for example, one of the listing agents I talked to literally makes a spreadsheet and then funnels each of those categories in Excel to bring up the lowest, you know, contingency dates, so on and so forth, or the highest price. But there are a couple things that we can do as buyer's agents to kind of help stick out from the pack. So before you even write the offer, make sure you're setting expectations of the market to your buyers, right? Set those expectations, know the comps, let them know that if they're going in and they're lowballing properties, that they could potentially be competing with dozens of other offers, and their offer might not even get countered. Right? The agent may not even take that time. So know the comps in the area, support that with the recently solds. Make sure you call the agent, you know, call the listing agent, let them know that you're going to be writing an offer, ask them if they have any specific details that they or their clients would like in the actual offer themselves. Another good competitive thing is to ask them if they have specific type of services that they'd like to use. So rather than writing seller's choice in there, if you already have the specific seller's choice written down, then you know there's no need to counter that part in the contract. So also check the MLS, right? Make sure in your pre-offer, when you call them, see if there's supplements, see if there's additional forms that they want to fill out that could potentially exclude your client, right? So make sure you are filled in with that. Okay, during your submission process, submit a cover letter. Now, a cover letter is it can be in the body of an email. It doesn't need to be a separate attachment, but there are lots of things that you can use to leverage in that cover letter. You know, describe your relationship with your client. You know, I've been working with this person for so many years. You know, you can also touch bases on their qualification guidelines. Right? So talk about, you know, that they've been working with their lender, or that they have certain qualifications that they've already, you know, been working through in this process. Attach them all as one PDF, right? So that was across the board. Most of the listing agents said that they cannot stand when things come in separate attachments, right? So you have the RPA and then you have their pre-approval. Put them all into one PDF. And if you have a problem doing that, you know, contact your agent services and they can help you. Text or call to confirm receipt. That's another one. Some people were sending off offers and they weren't, for some reason, being emailed or going through to the listing agent. So definitely follow up with that. The third one, terms. Know your loan type and keep that competitive, right? So that's something right now that is significantly can be a problem, because you're going against a lot of all cash offers, right? That are offering maybe 7-day closes, 10-day closes with no contingencies. So make sure that your client has the best competitive offer type. You know, maybe it's going conventional with a 5% down because they're putting more down than 3.5. And then again, that forelays me into down payment. A lot of the listing agents are looking at who has the highest down payments because they think that they are more skin in the game. So it's offering more security to their clients and to their transactions. Also with the pre-qualification, when you're sending over the pre-qualification, make sure that it's a good, vetted, valid pre-qual. It has their FICO scores on it. You know, it says the correct purchase price. Don't let it be a range, that kind of thing. And then of course, the last one is absolutely follow up. Right? You've submitted the offer. It's everything with good terms. Again, have the lender call the listing agent after submission. Have them introduce themselves. You know, hi, my name is Alex Gurr, and I work with my client XYZ. Do you have any questions about their qualifications? You know, do you have any questions about what they've gone through? They've gone through DU, or they've gone through further than just a pre-qual. They can really express that to these listing agents. Also, keep following up yourself, right? Don't submit an offer and then let it wait a week and a half, not hear anything from the listing agent, and just assume that you didn't get the offer, right? Some listing agents are taking backup offers, right? So make sure that you keep following up, your terms are competitive as much as possible. Make sure your submissions are clean and done correctly, that there's no errors on your RPAs, and then make sure that your clients are on board with what's happening in our market right now. Again, these are all things, build rapport with the agents that's going to help bring you to the top of that list, right?
Awesome job, Halley. Thank you so much. Good share. I'm once again make sure to make one image from this one. I'm gonna share with you later on, together with Mr. Way's presentation as well. So you're gonna have that content. You can memorize it and share info with your clients. Mm-hmm. We have 4 p.m. session today, broker class, and 5 p.m. mentee session. A few good sessions tomorrow between smart plans and building passive income. And then same thing on Friday, tech session after the coaching sessions, and we're gonna have a virtual escape room again, 5 p.m. It should be a fun one. Please join. Ask for the link if you don't have it. And all of you start to get emails regarding Bold and Mega Camp, so make sure to subscribe. It's all gonna be virtual again, and Mega Camp should be the really impressive event, so make sure to show up. Last but not least, next week meeting's guest is going to be Christine Hansen. She is the Vice President of Advocacy for the National Association of Realtors, Christine Hansen, and she will share with us most recent insights and what the NAR is up to. So make sure to be there next week, Wednesday, 10 a.m. Thanks, guys, for joining. Stay safe, stay busy. Mr. Oscar Way, thanks again for your time and insight and wisdom. And stay safe, everybody. Take care. Thanks for your time. Have a good day.
Thanks, Meny.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day. Bye-bye, everybody. Good job, Halley.